Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take that stack of sources you've shared, the articles, the research, the economic forecasts, and we distill it all down.
Right. We find the essential, the surprising, and really the most relevant insights. We're here to cut through all that noise.
And today, our mission is really about synthesis. We are diving deep into the financial, economic, and some major policy shifts that are set to define 2026.
And this isn't just theory. We're looking at specific numbers, released by the Social Security Administration, key economic forecasts, and the huge implications of the Inflation Reduction Act on Medicare.
Exactly. Our whole goal here is to translate these moving pieces, especially around your taxes, your retirement benefits, and your medical expenses, into concrete knowledge you can actually use.
We want you to feel ready for what's coming.
Absolutely. So let's start with that big picture, the macro forecast. It kind of sets the stage for everything else.
It really does. It provides the crucial backdrop for everything we're about to discuss.
Okay, so let's unpack it. If you had to put a title on the 2026 economic outlook, what would you call it?
I'd call it a year defined by policy crosswinds. That's really the theme.
Crosswinds.
Yeah, uncertainty is high, and that's largely because we have these major fiscal policies pushing in opposite directions, and the Fed is trying to, land the plane right in the middle of it all.
So are we talking about a soft landing or maybe something a little bumpier? What does the growth forecast look like, especially for the first half of 2026?
Well, the sources, specifically the economic forecasts we reviewed, they paint a picture of ongoing deceleration. Real GDP growth is expected to weaken pretty significantly. We're looking at maintaining pretty slow growth through late 2025 and right into early 2026. And a key headwind here, something to watch, is the continuation of tariffs. That acts as a consistent drag.
And of course, when growth slows, the labor market usually follows. What's the projection for unemployment?
The labor market is expected to continue softening, but on a gradual path. Unemployment is projected to rise toward 4.7% in early 2026.
Which, historically, isn't that high.
No, it's low by historical standards, but it definitely signals a significant cooling off from the extremely tight labor markets we've seen recently.
Okay, and crucially for everyone's budget, let's talk inflation. We've seen so much volatility. What's the expectation for 2026?
This is where we finally see projections that align more closely with the Fed's targets, though not immediately. PCE inflation.
That's the Personal Consumption Expenditures Index, the one the Fed really watches.
Exactly. That's projected to peak slightly above 3% year over year in the first half of 2026. But, and this is key, the forecast expects it to ease quite a bit, dropping to 2.3% by year end.
That 2.3% number seems really important. It brings us right back to those policy crosswinds you mentioned. You have the Fed trying to cool things down, but the government is pushing and pulling at the same time.
That's it, precisely. What's so fascinating is that the fiscal support for growth is aimed at businesses. We're talking tailwinds from things like accelerated depreciation and other tax cuts.
But at the same time.
But these are partially offset by headwinds that are directly hitting consumers, especially those who rely on safety net programs.
Like cuts to Medicaid and the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. Those temporary pandemic-era supports are falling away. Exactly. So the growth incentives are largely on the supply side, while consumers on those foundational programs might feel a very real fiscal squeeze. It just reinforces that 2026 won't feel the same for everyone.
Okay, let's talk monetary policy. The Fed's role, they delivered another 25 basis point rate cut in December 2025.
Right, bringing the target rate down to that 3.50 to 3.75% range. And our sources suggest 2 more cuts in the first half of 2026 are likely.
So that's the baseline expectation.
It is, but here's the crucial sticking point. The Fed's messaging is crystal clear on this. For them to make those further cuts, they require, and this is a quote, noticeable weakening in the labor market.
So they're basically saying things might need to get worse for workers, more unemployment, before the economy gets the relief of lower interest rates. That sounds like a really risky tightrope walk. It absolutely is, and that leads directly into the policy risks. What happens if they get it wrong?
What stands out to you on the risk front?
Well, the risks really cut both ways. On the upside, you've got politics. With rising public concern over affordability, there's always the potential for some kind of government stimulus ahead of the midterm elections.
An unexpected jolt of demand.
Right. But on the downside, the risk is a sharp downturn. We're already seeing hiring freezes, some layoffs. If that low-churn equilibrium in the labor market breaks down suddenly, we could see a sharper recessionary period than what's forecasted.
That 4.7% unemployment could spike higher.
It could, and quickly.
Okay, that macro framework gives us our footing. Now let's drill down, from the big forecast to the numbers that directly affect guaranteed income. This is where we translate that inflation picture into your pocket. We have the specific Social Security updates for 2026.
Right. And the key piece of news for beneficiaries is the cost of living adjustment, the COLA. More than 72.5 million Social Security recipients are going to get a 2.8% COLA increase.
And it's interesting, the 2.8% CLA is a little higher than the projected year-end PCE inflation we just talked about, which was 2.3%. Why the difference?
That's a really crucial distinction. The CLA isn't based on the PCE. It's based on the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, or CPIW.
Which tracks different things.
It does. The CPIW typically reflects slightly higher inflation in areas like gasoline and food, which, disproportionately affect the spending habits of retirees and working people.
Let's talk dollars and cents. What does that 2.8% adjustment actually look like?
The average monthly benefit for all retired workers is going up from about $2,015 to $2,071.
So an increase of about $56.
Exactly. And for disabled workers, the average rise is from around $1,586 to $1,630 a month. These are moderate but necessary adjustments to help maintain purchasing power.
Now for the other side of the ledger, taxes. This affects current workers, especially high earners.
We're seeing a pretty big jump in the maximum taxable earnings. That's the cap on income subject to Social Security tax. It's going up to $184,500 in 2026.
Wow, that's up from $176,100. So that's almost an $8,500 increase in the cap.
It is. So for high earners, that's a significant amount of additional income now subject to that FICA tax. The tax rate itself, 6.2% for employees, stays the same.
So they contribute more, but it also increases their potential benefit later.
Correct. And speaking of the highest potential benefit, the maximum payout for a worker retiring at their full retirement age, or FRA, will be $4,152 per month in 2026.
Okay, let's dig into something that causes a lot of confusion. The earnings test. For people who work while collecting benefits before their full retirement age.
This is so critical for planning. For those who are not yet at their full retirement age, the annual earnings limit is rising to $24,480.
And if you earn more than that?
The rule is simple. $1 is deducted from your benefits for every $2 you earn above that limit.
But the rules change in the year you actually hit your FRA.
They do. They get more generous. For those reaching FRA in 2026, the limit jumps way up to $65,160. And the deduction rate is different. It's $1 for every 3 you earn over the limit.
But only for the months before your birthday.
That is the key detail. This deduction only applies to earnings in the months before you reach FRA. Once you hit that birthday, you can earn as much as you want with no benefit withholding.
And for younger workers, the cost of entry is going up a bit. It now takes $1,890 in earnings to get one Social Security credit.
Right. And you need 40 of those over your career to qualify for benefits.
So with all these adjustments, what's the long-term funding picture look like?
Well, the concern is still there. The Combined Trust Fund, the OASDI, is projected to pay 100% of benefits until 2034.
And after 2034?
After that point, continuing payroll tax income is projected to cover about 81% of the expected benefits. So, it's not an immediate crisis, but it does frame the urgency for policymakers to act within the next decade.
Okay, that gives us the economic and the guaranteed income picture. But for so many people, financial stability really hinges on healthcare costs.
Absolutely. More than the COLA sometimes.
So let's shift gears to the structural changes from the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, and Medicare.
This is where we see the most significant, really fundamental change for consumers. The IRA's drug pricing provisions are meant to totally reshape pharmaceutical spending.
Let's start with the biggest, most immediate save for people on high-cost drugs. The co-pay caps in Medicare Part D.
The effect is just dramatic. In 2024, the law got rid of that 5% coinsurance above the catastrophic threshold. But the real game changer hits in 2025.
What happens then?
A hard annual cap of just $2,000 on out-of-pocket drug spending for Part D enrollees.
A $2,000 cap. To make this real, who does this actually help?
It helps a huge number of people. Back in 2020, about 1.4 million Part D enrollees spent over $2,000 out of pocket. And for those with the absolute highest costs, they would have saved, on average, over $3,500.
That is a massive relief. I mean, think about people on specialty medications for cancer or MS.
Exactly. Take a high-cost cancer drug like Revlimid. The average out-of-pocket cost for that drug was $6,200 in 2020. This IRA cap brings that personal liability all the way down to the $2,000 maximum. That is life-changing.
We've also seen the cap on insulin costs, which took effect a bit earlier.
Yes, the IRA limited monthly cost sharing for insulin to $35. That started in 2023. Given that the average out-of-pocket cost was around $54 per prescription before, this is a tangible, immediate reduction for millions.
Okay, but the most historic, and I think controversial change, is the new government power to negotiate drug prices. This really starts to kick in during 2026.
This is a landmark policy shift, truly. Starting in 2026, the government gets the authority to negotiate prices for a small number of drugs, 10 Part D drugs to start, that are high cost and don't have generic competition.
And their teeth to enforce it.
Oh, absolutely. Non-compliant manufacturers face an excise tax that starts at 65% of their U.S. sales. It's a powerful mechanism.
So the power to negotiate sounds like a clear win for consumers today, but this is where those policy crosswinds really start blowing, right? What's the projected cost down the road?
That is the essential trade-off, and the sources are clear. While negotiation is expected to save Medicare almost $100 billion over 10 years, the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, estimates it will also lead to 13 fewer new drugs coming to market over the next 30 years.
13 fewer out of how many total?
Out of about 1,300 new drugs expected to be introduced over that same span. So it's about a 1% reduction.
That's the debate.
That's the whole public policy debate. Is the immediate guaranteed financial savings for people today worth that projected long-term impact on pharmaceutical R&D?
Beyond negotiation, what else is in there to curb prices and increase access?
Two big things. First, inflation rebates. Manufacturers have to pay a rebate to Medicare if their drug prices rise faster than inflation. That puts a real structural cap on price hikes.
And second,
Cost sharing is completely eliminated for adult vaccines under Medicare Part B. Think of the shingles shot. This impacts over 4 million people who got a Part D vaccine in 2020, many of whom paid close to $60 for that one shot.
finally, let's touch on the expansion of the low-income subsidy, or LIS.
This is a huge move for equity. Starting in 2024, people with incomes up to 150% of the poverty level get full Part D LIS benefits. It eliminates that old partial benefit tier.
And what are the savings like for that group?
On average, their annual drug costs are expected to fall by nearly $300. But for low-income folks on high-cost specialty drugs, the savings could be, close to $1,900 a year. It's a massive deal for them.
So let's put all the pieces back together. We've got an economic forecast for 2026 that's all about policy crosswinds, an uncertain labor market, but easing inflation. We have some moderate necessary adjustments to Social Security.
And we've detailed these huge structural changes to Medicare thanks to the IRA. The overall direction seems to be one of increased financial stability and lower personal liability for consumers, especially with prescription drugs.
And that stability is being funded by shifting costs.
Primarily onto manufacturers and private insurance plans, and also by increasing the Social Security tax base for high earners.
So you now have a clearer map of the key financial gates coming in 2026. But as we close, let's go back to that trade-off. The IRA drug pricing provisions, they're expected to save Medicare $98.5 billion over 10 years.
But at the potential cost of 13 fewer new drugs coming to market over the next 3 decades.
And that raises the important question you need to mull over as you think about your long-term planning. When do guaranteed financial savings for the population today outweigh the long-term projected risk to medical innovation tomorrow? It's the ultimate crosswind defining this entire era of policy.